I am Franco-Ontarian. I studied in Ottawa. I have 2 master's degrees, and one from St. Paul's University and one from University of Ottawa. At St. Paul's University, it's in counseling and spirituality and also social work. I worked 5 years in psychotherapy, in mental health, and then I left my job to come here in the fraternity. I grew up in a religious family. I actually stepped back a little bit, especially in my teenage years and beginning of my 20s. But there was a call that was there since I was very small, and it used to come back once in a while, and I was always blocking my ears. I didn't want to hear it. And the third time, I thought I was beginning of my 30s, and I left everything. And I reconnected with my faith, and I think the breeding ground that I grew up in helped me, actually. So I entered officially in May 2017 here. I did my postulate, novitiate, and my first monastic vows I did very recently, September 26th of this year. So the church was particularly empty. Before my entry, this woman was working there in this long-term healthcare facility, and she works there still. And with the pandemic, well, they needed help in the long-term healthcare facility. They were looking for someone in the readaptation services department. And social work is involved in this as well. So during the pandemic, they were doing other tasks, not only their own tasks. They were doing Skypes with families and the residents. They could see only their family through the screen, right? So they were doing these tasks, and they needed help as well. And the manager of this sister of ours who was working there was asking her if they could send someone else. Actually, we had lost our jobs. We had been laid off. So we talked, and together, all of us, and we thought, do we want to send someone? And yes, actually, I didn't feel concerned. I didn't think they would send me, but it was logical as well, because I have this training and this experience. And from one day to the next, it was really fast, and I was sent there. We didn't need a particular training to do this, because these tasks were not requiring special training. But I was introduced to the readaptation service department. My first day of work, actually, things changed a bit, because the manager, she found out about my background and what I could do. So I offered her some spiritual assistance, because there was a priest coming in the afternoon, 2 hours a day for the residents. But he couldn't be there all the time, so I offered my services. So I was an attendant, patient attendant, But I was doing some spiritual counseling actually, because this is what the manager wanted me to offer them. And spirituality on a global basis. Just sometimes it was just to listen to them talk about their solitude, and so seeing this, I was sent to the lockdown zone area. So there was a special room dedicated to this. So people were there for 2 weeks or more. So I was introduced to this room there. So I spent some time there until it closed because we had less cases and there was not so much of a need for this. So we closed this area and I started to go around in the different levels. And depending on the needs of the residents, I was doing some spiritual visits. But there were a lot of needs actually, because with solitude of the families, and since it had been 2 or 3 months, they couldn't see their families, or so people were diminishing at many levels actually. So I was more like a presence. So it was my role in the end. So I was there for 5 months in the end. And we talked about it at the beginning when they were asking the question, should we send a second sister there? We thought, okay, is there a risk that we're going to bring COVID in our community? But we so wanted to offer something, and yes, we were there praying for people, but we couldn't welcome people from the city we were praying for, right? So we felt a need to be with the city and also to really do our mission of charism of Jerusalem. So we were all on the same wavelength, all of us. And there were some little moments of attention and being there and care at the beginning of the day before leaving. So everything's going to be fine, be courageous. And there was a space for expression where we could really share what we were going through, what we were experiencing in general, the update on the situation and in our work. And I really appreciated that as well. And of course, there's a limit to what we could say and what I felt I could actually express. Because I was fully there with all the sisters and they were there with me, but the part of what I was experiencing, of course, they could understand as much as they could, right? But they were not experiencing the same reality. And they were praying, they were supportive. I really felt I was sent to do a mission, and I was carried by all of this and their support. And this is what helped us go through this and give ourselves all this time. We were more vigilant, of course, than usual. We were leaving together, coming back together. For instance, for the meals, we had all taken a certain distance. But we were actually eating not with the other ones. We were not doing the dishes with them because we didn't have so much space. And we really tried to respect our distances everywhere we were meeting people. to be a little bit more at a distance. It was not always easy to live, actually, experience, because everyone wanted to keep a certain distance, but for us it was even more important because we didn't want to bring anything in our community or outside. So during the first wave, we could cultivate our liturgy, but among ourselves. We were using almost the whole church, all the 16 of us. So we participated and we were included in all the community tasks and in liturgy as well. So things continued to function pretty normally for us. And I think this really helped us to feel we were all together, because we all really much needed that. It was constant adaptation. It evolved, it changed maybe at three particular moments. There were three turning points, maybe. So, of course, it was destabilizing. It was something really new the first week. And to go into a lockdown, closed area was a major step for me. I was never scared to catch COVID, actually. That was not the point. But the responsibility I felt was so great. My responsibility towards them was so great. These people were totally isolated. They were not in their room. They were in a large room. No music, no telephone, no television. I was bringing music sometimes. But facing the role that I had to play and its importance, I felt a bit of a vertigo. But I actually really appreciated being in this area. And also with the colleagues working there, there was a bond that will never break, actually, a very peculiar relationship. And there was also an adaptation when they closed this area. I needed to mourn. There was a grief there as well. And then something new appeared, and it was useful for a lot of people. Actually, a lot of people didn't have COVID, and there was a long time where we had some kind of a rest, but it was very rich emotionally. I was going through all sorts of emotions. There was grace and there was joy, facing this solidarity between the colleagues and the mutual support we could feel. It was incredible. Also in front of the interior journey that residents were going through and how things were going through. There was an act of grace that we can feel in the liturgy, and there was also a lot of tears, sometimes tears of sorrow. But not only, but there was a depth that I was feeling that just touched my heart entirely. To see how people were touched by the different conversations. So when I was going to work, I wasn't dressed as a religious person, but I was dressed in secular clothes. But some people, some colleagues knew where I was coming from, but I didn't actually talk about it so much. There are two persons I talked to about it. Actually, I talked to some members of a family of a woman who died from COVID. And actually, it helped to develop some kind of a closer relationship because she needed this dimension. And what was important for her to know that I was a consecrated person, though I hadn't taken my vows yet. For her, what was important is that I was praying with her mother because she couldn't do this, but I was there with her. And she was not conscious, but I recited Our Father in Arabic. And for her daughter, it was really important to know that we were praying together. So I think there it was important for me to reveal myself, but I had to be careful with that as well. One resident was suffering from COVID and she was in the lockdown zone. And right away she asked me, she just knew. So I didn't want to lie to her. I told her yes. So I wanted to actually start our relationship on a truthful basis. So the first thing I felt that these 5 months that were given to me, they were offered as a grace in a period of waiting before I do through my profession. When I started actually in April, I had received the response that I was accepted to the temporary profession, but there was a lot of uncertainty as for the date. It could have been done in June, but the prioress was stuck in Italy because of all this. So we didn't know when it would happen. So this work happened right at that time, and it helped me to go through this waiting period that was not a waiting period because it brought me it was not planned, but September 18th, I stopped working there, and the week after was my profession day. So it just brought me to this moment of profession. And it could really help me to understand this commitment I was about to do, the charism of Jerusalem, and to go to feel that this work I did there helped me to understand how I live silence, how I experience silence, and everything I was carrying with all these people that I had been with. I was bringing them with me in my liturgy, in my prayer, in my silences. So it was something grand, actually. So this dynamic of being within the city, within the world, and within the Lord, and with being with the community and a praying community, and some people, the people who knew at the long-term healthcare facility, they enjoyed the fact that there was a whole community praying for them, and I felt that there were all the different aspects of our monastic life were coming all together. It was not only like pieces of the puzzles all separate, they were becoming a whole. They were not totally unified, but I could have a taste of this unification of the being. And this fully lived monastic life, for me, it allowed me to deepen this vow, to feel it more inwardly, and to say it actually. And at the same time, I wanted to announce it, to reveal it, reveal the Christ to the world, and to maybe somehow show the way. I think it's what it is as well. Unconsciously or consciously, my aim was to have a religious life, a professional life, to put all this together. And what I could offer people, if it could help them to become more unified. If myself, I feel more unified with putting all together liturgy and professional life and monastic life, if I feel more as a whole myself, I can bring people in this direction, in this process. And one of the ladies I worked with found peace. Actually, this brought her peace. This was quite strong for me. I have tears coming to my eyes because I think God acted there. It's one of the first ladies I met in the lockdown zone, in the closed zone area, and she felt right away I was a religious person, and a few moments later she actually left this area because she was not suffering from COVID anymore, but I couldn't say goodbye to her right away. But later on, when I was going on the different floors, I could talk with her and discuss with her, because I wanted to pursue with her, because I felt there were aspects of her that were wounded, that were scattered, that she had felt a lot of rejection from her family, and she had been wounded by love by a lot of people. And then I arrived there, and very quickly I saw something in her heart, that her heart was filled with love, that she was able to love. And I really love this woman. She was lovable, although she didn't feel so. Because this was an important factor for me. And as time went by, we continued our discussions. And she was also praying for me for my September 26th, my entry into the vows. And my last week of work, I went to see her, and there was a radical change in her. Her door was open, and before her door was closed, she was grumpy at first, but she had a huge heart, but there was this facade that she was putting up. And I was the one who, with other people who had allowed her to feel she was loved, and she was more at peace with her past, with the different wounds that she had received from her family, and she was in peace, and she was in joy, and she was welcoming other people. So it started with me opening a tiny door, and then all these doors opened up, and she was going around. And I left her, I stopped working there, and she died suddenly. We weren't expecting this. She was like in her early 60s. It was really a shock for me. She was, I thought, in good health. There was a shock, and then right away there was an act of grace that it turned out to be me accompanying her in the last moments of her life and having her found peace with her past and with her God as well. And for me, it seems simple as an experience when you just say it in words, but it was very, very deep, actually, this experience for me and for her to be able to go through this and to see this radical change in her heart, transforming, opening up to love and peace and joy. For me, it says everything. And the 2-3 days after I heard that she died, I was in a state of silence and contemplation in front of what had happened. And for me, this was a grace that I just received. I was offered this situation. And for me, the importance of obedience, how afterwards, with what the Lord had done to the life of this woman, how I had been helpful for a lot of people, but specifically for this woman. I was the instrument of God here. The Lord sees and does, but the importance of each of us and how we need to be obedient to the will of the Lord. And why was I sent there? I knew that the Lord was sending me there in some way. But when you can see the fruit of your work, of course, this is a blessing. This is very good. And since my profession and since this experience, I think this will follow me. This has followed me during my whole temporary profession.